Hello. I did my paper on Christian nationalism and its links to promoting fascist ideas. Uh, First, let's take a look at what the definition for fascism is. According to Webster's dictionary, fascism is a political philosophy that exalts political philosophy that exalts nation and often race above the individual, standing for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Um, Standard, well-known examples of fascism are Mussolini and Hitler as fascist dictators. Those are some of the very first images in your brain when the word fascism comes up. They're heavily associated with it. Um, so in my paper, I wanted to uh, search for links to fascism uh, historically within U.S. history, and link that to the way that Christian nationalism is perpetuating fascism in contemporary uh, media discourse, as well as pushing fascist agenda politically. Um, Slavery, while not falling under the conventional fascism uh, definition, is seen it can be classified as proto-fascist because it came before. Um, it's okay. So Stefan Reyes compares uh, the Confederacy pre-civil rights, I mean, pre Civil War and post Civil War to the Nazi regime. Uh, he links them in a way that is very similar to the way that um, he links them in a way that's very similar to the way that that some Confederate sympathizers and white supremacists also link the two. Um, some of these examples are like for example, on January 6th, there was a lot of people that were flying both Nazi symbols as well as Confederate flags as well in the crowd. They're heavily associated together from white nationalists within the U.S. Uh, he also talks about clerical fascism as the way that that kind of helps them to justify their ideas of slavery, and a lot of the times these Confederate thinkers had a difficult time justifying slavery in a way that was specific to race, so they had a very hard time with that. Um, that also is pretty reminiscent of the way that Christian nationalism kind of stemmed from those ideas based in Christian and Christian values. So, uh, the Christian nationalist thinking, the general mechanisms in which that works, have not really changed all that much. Um, Christian nationalists have been attacking marginalized communities for many years, such as the LGBT community is a big example of this. They're constantly on the front, talking about morality and how being gay and being gay or trans, and having like a non-binary gender identity, they often talk about that as being sinful. Having a man having relations with another man is seen as like a sin, and sins are immoral. Um, I found that morality and religion are often interlinked together. Um, it makes a lot of sense because most people's faith is the basis for their morality. A lot of times, if you'll hear someone speak on, for a personal example, my dad, uh, whenever he talks about, whenever we have a conversation about the LGBT community, um, his arguments always come from a religion-based morality perspective. Uh, um, Evangelicals and Christians are they're a very big demographic, and they can have a huge impact on the way that U.S. politics, uh, happens, and it has a big effect. For example, evangelical Christians really liked and bolstered George W. Bush's base. They really loved him because he found God. He later in life, and he was very openly Christian. And so when his voter base and the evangelicals would see that, they'd associate that with being moral and being a good person. A lot of the times, because they associate their own religion with what's good and moral, they will attach themselves to political political figures that exemplify what they believe to represent them, which they think that they themselves are moral and just. So a lot of times they attach to, for example, George W. Bush. They were a really big fan of it. And so it's very interesting that they were able to identify so much with George W. Bush, and about 8 years later, after the Obama administration, they attached themselves to the Trump campaign in ways that are very interesting, because Trump is not the archetypal he's not the archetypal, Christian holy man that George W. Bush was. But they attached to him very strongly because of his usage of fear as a political tool. Let's see. He would appeal to evangelicals in ways that were to scare them. For example, Make America Great Again is a good example of the ways that he can paint the current political landscape of his time as being in shambles. It's really bad. It's very immoral. And the way forward to make things better would be to focus on themselves. They used "Make America Great Again" alongside slogans like "America First." In this way, he was able to appeal to them and point at other people as, for example, immigrants as the problem, as well as not focusing on the people of America, instead going and helping other countries with what they're doing. And so America First and Make America Great Again were kind of fear-mongering techniques that he used in order to win them over. And he would present himself as the correct political candidate in order to make those things happen. And so later on, during his entire campaign, he makes it very clear that he doesn't want to openly disparage white nationalists, but because they make up part of his base. And so during the January 6th insurrection, in which he incited the invasion of the Capitol building, you can see a lot of not anti-fascist. You can see a lot of fascist and white nationalist symbolism in Confederate flags, such as the traditional Confederate Gaston flag, and also there was also actual Nazis and KKK members who were able to invade the Capitol building in order to keep him in an attempt to keep him in power as the president.